Oi, oi, it's your boy, Slacky J. It's the Jag Slack podcast, and we're coming at you on Monday the 16th of October, and we've had some fights over the weekend. But before we get into that, obviously I wrote my Sunday morning breakdown of Edson Barboza versus Sadiq Yusuff, so we're going to be getting into that today. But if you want to read/have that read to you and see all the diagrams and understand what I'm talking about a bit better, head over to the Patreon. But also, last week, this is stuff we only did on the Boycast, because in the last week, UFC 294 has collapsed, but collapsed in a way that's sort of made it better. Charles Oliveira out, massive, nasty cut, second mouth opened up under his eyebrow, and Alexander Volkanovski said, yeah, I'll take the fight on a week and a half's notice. So Volkanovski versus Makhachev 2. This time, no camp. And in honor of that, I went back and I watched Volkanovski versus Makhachev 1, realizing that I hadn't written an article on it. I had only done possibly my most positive podcast ever on it, with the exception of maybe Yuri Prochazka versus Glover Teixeira. I was very hype on that. But the article is open to everyone, and it's read by me if you want an audio track, and it's got lots of examples of the things that I think were interesting about that first fight. So stuff about Islam Makhachev's counterpunching, his interesting ability to turn one punch into another. He shows a left straight and he throws a left uppercut. He shows a left straight and he throws a wide left that goes around the parry. Volkanovski overusing the shifting right hook, which he uses against southpaws, but basically he came to rely on only that against Makhachev, and it got really messy for him. Volkanovski's awesome back body lock defense. He gives up his back on the feet to make stuff happen, and then he puts his head straight into the fence as opposed to being alongside the fence, and it made it so that Makhachev couldn't mat return him. There's two occasions in that fight where Makhachev goes, I'll try, and pulls Volkanovski down on top of him, and Volkanovski turns over and gets out. Loads of interesting stuff from that fight. We're going to be talking about stuff like from that fight that I think they need to look at and use more in the next fight. Next week, obviously, and stuff that didn't turn up in that fight that I think both guys could do. But I think that's a good place to start for one of the biggest fights of the year. And again, open to everyone. I will put the link on the YouTube. If not, just look at the Patreon or go to fightprimer.com. Anyway, now let's do the fights that we've just had. Sadiq Yusuff versus Edson Barboza. Sadiq Yusuff has been a boy of the podcast for a while. He often even recommends people sign up to my Patreon. A bit of a legend. There was something quite funny happen. I don't suspect he'll mind me saying this, but I don't reply to DMs not because I have like a policy, but just because I'm shit at remembering to on Twitter. But when I was away on holiday a few weeks ago, I came back and I had two DMs from Sadiq Yusuff, and obviously it shows you the last one first, and it says, never mind, found it. And so then I went back, and the first question was, who's that guy you're always on about who throws the kicks to the back leg? And the guy was Yuki Oza. And would you know, at this fight, he comes out, he throws a ton of kicks to Edson's back leg. Fucking loved it. Brilliant. Need more of that in the UFC, and we'll talk more about that and the effect of it in a minute. But I just thought that was really funny. That he was like, I'm looking for that guy, and then immediately brought it out in the fight, having gone and watched the footage. But it was a beautiful showing from Edson Barboza too, because he got his world rocked in the first round. He looked, I was convinced, I mean, I think most people were convinced, yeah, not much coming back from this. And also Edson's been a bit of a front runner. I don't think anyone's ever accused him of being like a guy who collapses. He doesn't look for a way out. He never like quits. He's tough as nails, and we've seen that plenty of times. But he tends to do his best work when he's already showing that he's the better man. There's been a couple of big come from behinds, and there's been a couple of guys he's knocked out when they've had him on the back foot. And that sort of stuff I felt was interestingly played against in this fight by Yusuff. So, yeah, we'll start round one. What I really liked was Yusuff's jab. He checks with his rear hand, and then he squares his shoulders and he pumps a big jab with a full turn of the body. And he immediately popped Edson with two of those. And what Edson does, all his counterpunches, he throws from the inside slip. As in, when you jab, he slips to the inside of the jab, towards your chest, as opposed to the elbow side, the outside of the jab. He goes the big counter left hook, he's got the right straight to the body, he's got the right overhand. Doesn't do a lot of slipping to the outside of the jab. Doesn't do a lot of work with his own jab, to be honest. So he kept slipping to the inside of the jab, and Sadiq kept grabbing. He'd throw his jab out, it'd go over Edson's right shoulder, and then he'd just grab Edson's head, which is a great move and totally legal in MMA, and something that I think, it's legal in... I don't cover a lot of bare knuckle because BKFC in particular obviously murdered a dude. So I don't much like covering it. I do quite like the sport of bare knuckle boxing and the little resurgence it's had in recent years. But one of the things about the modern bare knuckle boxing is that they put together these MMA fighter versus boxing matches, and the MMA fighter remembers that they're allowed to hold and hit and beats up the boxer, because in boxing you are not allowed to hold and hit. So Yusuf's best shots in this fight were throwing the jab over Edson's shoulder, grabbing his head, and then hammering him with a right uppercut or a right hook. And then apparently he tore his shoulder at some point, so that sort of fell apart for him. But in the article I wrote, if there was an Aesop's fighting fables, Edson versus Sadiq would be the fable about how important bodywork is, because they basically traded punches. They basically took as many punches as each other for most of the fight, and Edson was taking them in the face and getting his face horribly swollen, and Sadiq Yusuf was taking them in the body and just slowing down. And the way that he was using the jab as a probe and a control it's a really cool thing that I wish more people did. Throwing the jab as you stick it in their face a few times to hurt them, and then you start grabbing their head when they start ducking, and that is a legitimate way to punish people. I wish Wonder Girl in her stupid 4-ounce boxing match against Zhong Jingnan the other week had done that a bit, grabbed her head because she kept ducking down. But to do that, and to jab well anyway, you have to let your elbows come away from your body, and that exposes you to body shots. Particularly on the left side of your body, the wide right to the body, the right straight underneath your armpit and down your ribs, which are the first sort of shots that Edson started landing well. The left hook to the body is his money punch, but he had to start landing the right to the body first to stay close enough or to slow Sadiq down enough to get to the left hook. But before we jump ahead to the bodywork, in the first round when Sadiq Yusuf was banging him with right hands, what I really liked was he was chasing Barboza to the fence, and Barboza has caught a couple of guys, most notably Benil Dariush, by going backwards and then kneeing them as they come in, or jumping kneeing them. And Dominic Cruz was saying this on commentary. He doesn't have any defense. He doesn't have defense. He just has offense that he throws as you come in. And that's true of this was an interesting fight because it was the first time I've seen him land the wheel kick or the back kick while pressuring the guy along the fence. Normally, he bounces back across the cage, stops, and as you walk into range, he hits you with the spinning kick or the wheel kick. Think of the Terry Etim one, or Dan Hooker, or Kevin Lee. But the knees are a bit safer because they go up the middle and you don't expose your back. So once Yusuf hurt him, he started following him to the fence, and then he flicked the jab out in front of him. He'd throw it once or twice, on the end of Edson's nose without any intention of hurting him. And what it did was that Edson would open up as if to throw a big knee, and then go, oh shit, not now. And as he's going back into his stance, he'd get boomed with an overhand. It was really nice to work in that first round. Both men in this fight had moments where they took the opponent down, or they worked from top, or on the top of the opponent once they hurt them. And both men were accused of that, I think they let it get away. You just got to stand up and make the ref stand them up and so on. It's tricky because the more rounded you get as a fighter, the more you want to use that. Because, in your head, obviously, it is far more efficient if you knock someone down to get the submission. Because, trying submissions on people who are already, dazed should be easier. Yusuf's stuff on the ground was quite interesting. He was in Barboza's closed guard, and he posted his head underneath the jaw, which is a classico Josh Barnett move, and tripoded up. And he did it against the fence so that he could posture up and start chucking down some bombs, and Edson would open his guard, and then Sadiq would step over into half guard and start working from there. What I did like from Edson Barboza was 2 attempts here. He did an arm bar into a sort of leg reap from the back, or a backside 50-50, or whatever you want to call it. And he also did, when he was against the fence on the bottom, getting stacked up against the fence with nowhere to go behind him, he also used the leg reap there to turn Sadiq's knee away. Leg reaps are, like an outside heel hook. It's where you throw your leg over the opponent's knee from the outside and you turn it in. And it's a necessary part of completing an outside heel hook. But even if you don't get the heel hook, even if you're not good at finishing outside heel hooks, which most people aren't, you turn their knee away from you, you buckle it in and turn it away. And it's almost impossible to land good, meaningful strikes on someone while your knee's being turned away from them. So anytime like you see someone do that and they get the heel hook and they reap it, and the other guy like kneels down and their knee line's completely free, and you're going, oh, they're not getting submitted here. It's still killing time, which is important if you get knocked down or hurt. And that use of the reap is what we were talking about. Pantoja does that a lot on the bottom against the fence. So yeah, really solid first round for Sadiq Yusuff, and then Edson Barboza starts landing the bodywork in the second round, and that was the key to turning the fight around. And the right hand to the body is so underrated by people because the liver is obviously right there on the right side of the opponent's body, is where it hangs down, and so that means the left hook and the left kick are your money shots, and people get so obsessed by that, or the solar plexus, which is right in the middle of bottom of your rib cage in the middle. People get so obsessed by that they forget that even wide rights to the body, which are just hitting like the ribs generically, they still take it out of people. Bruising people up in the body and just hitting them lots still works. There are lots of great boxers who their best punch has been their wide right to the body. Gene Fullmer, George Foreman. In MMA, Sergei Haritonov had great success with it. And if you can time it underneath the opponent's jab, that is so money. Because it's a real moment of weakness for them. They're extending, they're opening up their ribs, and they're at their least ready to absorb a body shot. And this one was just about Edson biting down on his mouthpiece and moving forward. It wasn't a quick get out of jail free. I've said that when he's on the back foot and he's losing, he does Hail Mary moves to try and bring it back. This was literally just him going, right, I'm going to grab this by the scruff of the neck and pull it back. And he did, and it was really impressive. And obviously, as the rounds went on, Yusuff slowed down. Barboza didn't slow down as much. He looked surprisingly fresh, even in like the fourth round to me. And there were a couple of really good connections along the cage when he could move Sadiq Yusuff back to the cage. He landed a great back kick. Yusuff did the right thing too. He went right, left, right again. Did the direction changes, but Edson read him like a book. And the brilliant thing about back kicks, I always say, like there's two really good ways to land spinning techniques. One, as a counter, because you know they're moving in. You know they're not going to... If you can read someone moving in, you've got a good chance of them not doing something weird and you losing them and turning your back for no reason. The other one is when they're circling along the fence. So you've got to put them against the fence so they have to move left or right. And one of those directions, they're moving straight into your kick or your spin. So Edson waited until he went past his foot, spun, and he met him halfway through the spin. And that also makes the kick shorter, which obviously... Back kicks, big long techniques. If you do them out in the open, you've really got to, catch your opponent sleeping, basically. But if you do them when the guy's circling towards it, you can take some serious time off the kick and catch them by surprise. And those back kicks really did seem to take a toll on Sadiq Yusuff. And of course, the wheel kick landed in pretty much the same way. One thing we should talk about before we move on is the Yoza kick, because it was dope. And I think more people should have seen it and gone, I'm going to start using that. And I think that's the case, that's the case that has been in kickboxing. But it took Yuki Yoza becoming the best kickboxer in the world at lightweight for people to notice and start copying. Andy Hug was kicking people in the back leg and knocking out world-class kickboxers with low kicks by kicking them in the back leg in the 90s. And dudes never picked up on it. I was watching a fight with Yuki Yoza where Nicholas Pettis, a well-accomplished kickboxer in K1, is on commentary and he's going, yeah, but he's not going to hurt him kicking him in the back leg, as Yuki Yoza is just tearing this man down by kicking him in the back leg. So the Yoza kick especially, you can kick the back leg a lot of ways. There's like Andy Hook was a southpaw, so he would throw his rear leg, his left leg, as a round kick into the opponent's back leg, which means you have to step right on top of the guy. Benson Henderson did that a few times against Donald Cerrone, I think it was. But the way that Yuki Yoza does it, the Yoza kick, is orthodox versus orthodox. You throw your right front kick into the opponent's quad on their back leg. So there is the danger that you're going to kick the cup. It happened once in this fight, but he threw and landed like over a dozen Yoza kicks. And the way that Yusuff was using it was he'd kick the back leg and then he'd step through into southpaw and land a southpaw jab, and it worked really well. And one of the really incredible things about this fight was that Edson Barboza was basically not able to kick the legs very much. I think they showed the stat on low kicks, and going to dig up the fight metric, even though I never trust fight metric anyway. What we got? Yeah, low kicks. Edson Barboza threw 8. Sadiq Yusuff landed 38 of 47. Wow. One of the interesting stats on that, Edson Barboza, 4 out of 8 landed. But if you watched Sadiq Yusuff's checks, they were pretty good. He was doing the modern style Aldo check, which has existed in Muay Thai for generations, as Muay Thai nerds will, I'm sure, inform me. But shortening your stance, pointing your knee out, and basically pivoting slightly to face the opponent's kick. Probably my most successful Filthy Casuals Guide video. You can go check it out now. Filthy Casuals Guide to Jose Aldo's disdain for low kicks. Jose Aldo checks kicks like this. And it's really interesting because by shortening the stance slightly to turn yourself out, you also put yourself further down their kick. So you can watch Jose Aldo do this to Pedro Munoz, but it happened in this fight. Edson Barboza threw a powerful right kick at Yusuff's calf. Because Yusuff retracts the leg slightly as he turns it out, not only does Edson Barboza connect on the hard part of the shin, the front of it, he connects with his toes. So there's 2 of them, really bad ones in this fight, where there's a huge bang and it's just Barboza's toes clacking off the shin. But I bring that up because I thought it was interesting that in addition to the checking, the Yoza kick seemed to keep Edson Barboza's back leg on the floor quite a bit because there was a really nice one where he threw his left leg in like round 2 and the Yoza kick hit him in the standing leg as he was doing it and he fell off balance. But yeah, just go back through and watch the number of times he kicks the back leg and how it moves Edson Barboza's hips. It's like when you watch someone get oblique kicked and they don't know what to do and they're like their leg straightens and their hips go back and their shoulders come forward and they're not in position to hit properly or counter properly. The one time that Sadiq Yusuff did get countered off the Yoza kick was when he threw it with his back to the fence because he'd been sliding away back to his left, going southpaw and then sliding back to his left. Back into the left. Going to have to get that sound from that JFK movie and put it on my soundboard. But because he was up against the cage, he couldn't do that, and Edson Barboza chased him back with 2 body shots. But yeah, Edson Barboza, wonderful performance out of an old man for that division. I think it was Heavy Hands said that he's an old man in the divisions where it really doesn't pay to be an old man. Where the average age of the heavyweight top 10 is like 40. The average age of bantamweight, lightweight top 10 is something like 30. For Sadiq Yusuff, really impressive round 1. Couldn't quite follow up on it. Some of these rounds were close. It was only in the later going that he really struggled. Even in round 5, like the other day I was moaning about Brent Primus against Usman Nurmagomedov. People got on Usman Nurmagomedov for not taking any risks or really even committing to anything on the feet. But then he'd hit a lovely takedown and Brent Primus would go to like closed guard and start pulling up his leg for rubber guard, but not working for anything. And you're going, why? Why are you doing that? And people are going, well, he couldn't get anything going against Usman. It's like, no, he didn't try to do anything against Usman. It's not something that you can't see. It's not invisible jiu-jitsu. It's not the battles unfolding in our minds. It's that he's not actually trying to do anything. He's just holding. Whereas Sadiq Yusuff gets taken down in the 5th round immediately. Back elbow into the face to turn Edson's head away, gets up to his hands and knees, gets up. Edson keeps the body lock, throws him down again, he gets up. That's what you need to be doing, especially if you're Brent Primus in a title fight. And that was in like rounds 2 and 3 as well. This was round 5, gassed out my arse because I've taken something like 90 body shots. So respect for that. But with Sadiq Yusuff, he's my boy, but I am always like, I just want to see him fight more. He's had trouble. Hang on, let me have a look at his recent activity. Yeah, he got 2 off in 2022, but 2020, 2021, 1 fight each, 1 fight this year, and it's already October. He's always impressive, even against guys like Arnold Allen, the surging Arnold Allen, looked great against Fili. Alex Caceres was on a run and he beat him. Really good fighter, just don't see a lot of him. Granted, there's all kinds of reasons for that. But yeah, it'd be nice to see him rebound like January time. But if he did tear his shoulder, then that's probably not happening. Anything else good on this card? I'll be honest, guys. This card, 11 fights, 4 finishes, 4 ladies fights. Obviously, none of them had finishes. Kind of not great. And then, the Terence McKinney fight, Terence McKinney either absolutely murders someone if they're not really like UFC level, or the moment that he gets past the 2nd minute, he's like, oh no, I'm tired now. That Matt Frivola win is doing a lot to prop up his reputation, but he's the kind of guy. Basically, someone described him as UFC's MVP, and it is that. If you gave him guys that aren't really that level, he will blow them out, and he'll look great doing it. This one was real simple. It was a combination you see Sanchai do all the time from southpaw, but overhand to knee. You throw the overhand. You either land the right knee on the body as they're covering up, or you grab the head and land the right knee up the middle, and that's what he got. Followed him to the fence. Would have got an even quicker finish if the ref wasn't letting him beat the tar out of this guy. Chris Gutierrez had an incredible fight where he looked in complete control and was hurting this guy with low kicks, but also looked completely incapable of finishing the dude. It was a really unthreatening way to beat someone up. Very weird. But on the main card, was it the co-main? No, on the main card, Jonathan Martinez, who's a teammate of Gutierrez, they both had these monster low kicks. For Adrian Yanez, we did say in the pre-fight, it was like, to get your boxing going, you have to put your lead foot in, which makes counter-kicking a real issue. They'll kick you when you step, and they'll kick you after you punch. And that's what Martinez did. And it really, Yanez had no answer to it. He was just getting his leg blown apart. I said this on Twitter, but I'd love to see what they're doing down at Factory X, because Gutierrez and Martinez, none of their other fighters, but just these two lads, seem to be able to kick people in the leg with absolutely no fear. And Martinez will land on the shin a lot of the time. The opponent will have their shin turned towards the kick, and he'll just take the worst connection possible, like Jan Blachowicz, and be fine. And either, there's something incredible about Jonathan Martinez's shins, or he's doing something very clever I'm not seeing. Some people said, obviously inside of the shin is very sensitive. So if he's taking some kind of inside angle and I'm just missing it, which would be very possible off those countering combination punching, if you step to the inside and throw it so that it's coming in behind their calf, but inside their shin, or he's going to break his leg horribly at some point, because you can't, people do, but you cannot keep throwing power kicks without setup at people's legs. When it's very possible that they take the kick on a good spot, as in high up on the shin, right up by the knee, and they break your shin in half. But I love Jonathan Martinez. He's a really good, solid all-rounder. He's getting known for the low kicks, but he's good at pretty much everything. I would say he didn't really punch at all in this fight, and I thought, you have decent punches. You're not obviously Yanez is known for his boxing, but don't get too carried away with the kicks, because he is a good all-rounder, which you saw in his last one against Said Magomedov. What else was of note? Michel Pereira one-punched a dude, which was pretty impressive. Just being a wild man. Really, he'd been bouncing around and circling off and changing stances as he circled, and he snuck through one punch that way. And then by doing that sort of circling off or running away, basically, every time Petroski came. It's what we always talked about with Machida back in the day, but forcing the extra step. If every time the opponent steps to you, you step away, they get in the habit of trying to correct that distance. And they go, well, he's just running from me or whatever. And so they take an extra step, and suddenly they're on top of you. And if you don't move when they move in, you can just punch for free. And that's kind of what happened here. Pereira stayed still. Petroski moved in like Pereira was going to move back, and Pereira just popped his was his left hand at that time or right hand in Petroski's grill and knocked him down. It was good to see Darren Elkins win a fight without taking a beating. I thought he looked really good in that one. And then the only other notable one was Cameron Simon losing to Christian Rodriguez. Loses the old unbeaten record, but kind of sad because Christian Rodriguez came in 4 pounds over, which is a lot. And then there's always this question, and I think Bisping brought it up on the commentary, but there's coming in 4 pounds over, but there's two ways you could do that. You either mess up your cut so badly that you give up and you don't even try, or you do a weight cut and you're still 4 pounds over, which once you rehydrate is a huge amount over. And he's done this 3 times in his last 7 fights. I mean, he's only got an 11-fight career. He's done it 3 times. Crazy. And, they were saying maybe he hasn't committed to the road work or whatever. But Duke Rufus is in his corner going, come on, we worked all that strength and conditioning. You've got the cardio to go 3 rounds. It's like, well, how are you still so overweight then? You clearly deliberately came in heavy. And for a while, you can do that. You can sacrifice 20% of your purse for a freebie. Now, I don't think it's as bad as other people said, because I've seen people saying, like, well, the difference was the clinch, and Rodriguez was 4 pounds heavier, he just muscled him around. No, he was counter-punching really well. Cameron Simon was doing some spazzy stuff on the feet and sort of running in behind stuff. Cruz pointed out, like, he doesn't really feint, he just is honest with his attempts. And Rodriguez had the cleaner, more technical counter-strike. He'd take a little slide back, throw 1-2, catch Simon in the aftermath or as he was running through. Grappling was all good. The anaconda choke that Christian Rodriguez kept going for, bit weird because he kept rolling the wrong way. You either roll towards the arm that you've got trapped so that they go over, or you stand up into them and you trip the knee on the other side, as Zabit used to do and Verdum used to do. But he would gate a roll away from the arm that was trapped, and it would just sort of like result in him sort of rolling around Simon's neck while Simon stayed on all fours. Made me think that he normally goes for it with the other hand and just rolled the same way automatically. But yeah, that was about it. The only other stuff there was actually lots of other stuff going on. There was ADCC trials, which so many matches that I haven't had time to even try to catch up on that. The one that I was watching was obviously Nicky Ryan. He is always the question mark because he's Gordon Ryan's younger brother. They split for reasons that are speculated wildly over on the internet. But, it tells you something about Gordon Ryan that he is the greatest grappler of all time, possibly, no gi. He's clearly the best in the world. He's very good at teaching. His instructionals are excellent. If you watch any footage of him rolling, he seems like a really good training partner. Anyone who attends his seminars says that he's really good at conveying what he means and really fun to roll with. Something about that man has to be so off-putting that everyone seems to leave, including his own brother. But Nicky Ryan, he was sort of like John Danaher's wunderkind, and it was like, oh, he's going to go to ADCC and win it at 16 years old or whatever. And obviously he didn't. And then he's had some stuff with injuries. He was off for a while. He came back. He had one grappling match against Dante Leon, ran through him with this amazing wrestling from the bottom and injured his knee in the process and was out for another year or whatever it was. But he got an invite to ADCC 2019, or was it 2017? And he wrestled for the whole match and lost in his first match. And the case was that he just wasn't competing very much. And he was like, okay, you're not getting another invite to ADCC, so you've got to qualify. So he went to the ADCC trials, and just to let you know what's happening, there's 2 North American trials, so you get 2 chances to get your way through. But in this one, the first round was a round of 238. That's how many people were in this division. Fucking insane. I mean, it's great that no-gi grappling is getting that huge. But Nicky Ryan wasted about 6 dudes, looked incredible, lost in the finals. Almost did it. It's like waiting for him to put it together, but then he just didn't. But I mean, there's another American trial that he could enter and possibly win, and also there's the chance that he gets invited anyway, because ADCC is a weird thing where it's not really a meritocracy. You can win your way in, but also they'll just invite MMA fighters that they like. And then Jason Rao apparently was doing amazing and starting to put it together. There's these guys who are so good, and then you're just like, if they could put it together. Because that's the hard thing about ADCC. Half the problem is getting there. You have these enormous qualifiers that you have to go through. Once you've been, if you had if you had a couple of entertaining matches at ADCC, they'll invite you back. But man, it's hard getting there in the first place. I think it was Magid Haj last time. He put in the performance of his life, submitted like 6 people back to back in the Brazilian trials, which obviously a lot of good guys at the Brazilian trials. And then in the final, Mika Galval armbarred him. And, only one of you gets to go. Sorry, mate. So he had to enter the other South American trials. And then, of course, there was the influencer boxing that was on last weekend. And the only thing about that is that Dylan Dennis, turned up not capable of fighting. Dylan Dennis is everything that's wrong with the world at the moment. Because, like, if you go on Twitter, I mean, I've complained about this last week, but it's the same on Facebook. I looked at that the other day. It's just like, on Facebook, Low Kick MMA, which used to be like a serious publication, is posting UFC's biggest event, McGregor versus Alvarez, 21,000 people. Kickboxing's biggest event, Takeri versus Tenshin, 50,000 people. People will always prefer stand-up fights to hugging. And it's like, just to get people engaged. It's fucking engagement bait, and it's ridiculous. And that's Dylan Dennis' whole thing. Even losing this fight, because of the way that engagement bait works, he's somehow going to get stuff out of it by being like, coward, wouldn't fight me in MMA, blah, blah, blah. Who gives a shit? The only thing that's funny about it is that Logan Paul is fucking terrible at boxing for someone who's trained so much. You know, the difference between Jake Paul, who's actually pretty competent, and Logan Paul, who throws a jab and then throws his right hand and his jab hand goes out to parallel with his, like he's doing a lateral raise with his left arm. It's crazy. And then KSI turned up like MVP doing jumping jacks. And yeah, I mean, who the fuck is paying for this? If you are any part of indulging in this or like, humouring this bollocks, I'm not going to say it's a disgrace to boxing, but what are you doing with your life? And then the commentary is done by like Ariel Helwani, and they had Gareth Davies, and it's like you couldn't find people with less interesting stuff to say about fighting if you tried. But anyway, we got UFC 294 coming up this weekend. I'm going to be doing a podcast about it later in the week, the Boycast for the boys, so sign up to the Patreon if you want that. I have put out an article on the previous fight, which you should check out for free for everyone. And you know where to find all my stuff, fightprimer.com. You know where to email me, jackslackpodcast@gmail.com. And I'm your boy, Jack Slack. I'll catch you next time. Christian Rodriguez and the Belly Matter bless.